Hey sports fans, Coach Nick here, and welcome to B-Ball Breakdown, another in our special series of playoff previews. And today I am lucky to have Chip Crain from 3 Shades of Blue and Nick Flynt from ClipperBlog, our true hoop blog nation, I suppose you want to call it. So let's start out with our overview of the series and how it's going to shape up, and we'll go with the higher seed, Chip from the Grizzlies. Give me your ideas on what's going to happen with the series.
Well, this series is going to be very, very tough. It's you look at every matchup, there seems to be pretty evenly matched. The Clippers have a big advantage at point guard. The Grizzlies have the advantages at small forward, shooting guard, and center. But our advantages aren't as big in those roles as the Clippers' advantage at point guard. So it should be a really exciting series.
Nick, let me throw it over to you and see what your take on what Chip said and what you feel the series is going to look like.
Yeah, basically exactly what Chip said in regards to the matchups. I'm definitely excited to see the different, I guess, adjustments we get from Memphis over the course of this series, especially in terms of pick and roll play. Defensively on the Clippers end, I have no idea what's going to happen there. That's bad defense versus pretty average offense. That's your general overview.
I hear you. Well, so you're not too excited about the Clippers' defense. Now let's talk about how the Grizzlies are going to attack the pick and roll, because clearly, the Clippers, that's their bread and butter. That's what they're going to run. Chip, how do you see can they do that? Can they hedge well enough? Can they contain Chris Paul and limit good shots by the Clippers?
Well, we're going to try. We've never had a lot of success against Chris Paul when he played for New Orleans, and this year he seemed to have his way at times. We're not going to play under the picks like we've done in the past. I'm sure Conley's going to work his way over the picks. If Chris Paul gets in, he's going to have to deal with Marc Gasol, with Zach Randolph, with Mo Spates. We've got the big bodies, so the idea is going to be to deny Paul the outside shots by going under the pick, force him into the lane where our big bodies will be there to help out.
Nick, how do you feel like the Clippers match up with the size of the Grizzlies? Is that going to be something they're going to be able to handle?
Great question. I'm a little bit worried about Marc Gasol in terms of Zach Randolph and Blake Griffin. Zach Randolph, not quite himself from last season, still been very good. I think that's going to be. It should end up being something of a I don't know. I'll say a draw in terms of that matchup. But Marc Gasol, much better touch than DeAndre Jordan. He can get a little out of control. He had foul trouble in at least one game. The rebounding of the Clippers, if they decide to go zone like they have some recently, has really suffered. And we know that the Grizzlies can hit the boards with Gasol and Zebo. So a little worried about that.
And how about, what do you feel about that? Is that going to be a distinct advantage, Gasol versus DeAndre Jordan, Chip?
Well, yeah, I think Gasol's got the advantage, but if you look at their head-to-head matchups this year, it hasn't worked out that way. Obviously, Blake Griffin takes a little bit of Marc's consideration, and it's left DeAndre open for some offensive rebounding, and he's caused us a lot of problems. Marc has to play big in this game. He's got to be the guy who dominates and is the all-star, or Memphis is going to be in big trouble.
Zebo is not going to start, is that right?
No, I believe the plan is to start Zebo again. He started last night against Orlando. He had a double-double. He's not the player he was in last year's playoff, but we're not the team we were last year. We brought Rudy Gay back. We've added some extra players off the bench to make our bench a lot stronger, and that allows us to play a slightly different offensive role for everyone, and that means less offensive influence from Zach. And we were forced to do that. We didn't want to do it, but when Zach went down with his injury, we had to make amends, and now we're running a different style. So it makes Zach's offensive impetus not quite so important, but he still is able to put up double-doubles in 25 to 30 minutes a night, and I expect his minutes will be going up once the playoffs begin.
And Nick, how do you feel about that? Do you think that you're going to be able to? Is Zebo going to be a real problem for the Clippers?
I don't think it'll be a huge issue. Blake Griffin, his biggest issue is in help. If we're talking about a matchup with him or with Kenyon Martin coming in off the bench, depending on how the rotations match up, I think Zach Randolph won't exactly, he's not going to be dominating, but you could also say, the wing size for the Grizzlies with Rudy Gay and even Maurice Spates coming in off the bench could give the Clippers issues because they're not a good guard or wing rebounding team. Caron Butler, Rudy Gay there.
Well, let me ask you this, Nick. Who do you think is the biggest key on the Clippers to winning the series?
It's almost too easy to pick Chris Paul because I think if they dominate offensively, that'll be enough, and then they'll be able to get by on defense more or less to simplify it.
Mm-hmm. And Chip, on your side, who do you think is ultimately the real key here on your team?
Well, that's one thing about the Grizzlies. We've never been a very single player oriented team. If I was going to put one person who's got to outperform, it'd probably be Tony Allen, because I anticipate the Grizzlies to do a lot of defensive arrangements where Tony Allen's actually guarding Chris Paul and moving Conley to cover Foy. And Tony's a great perimeter defender, but he gets it generally by cheating around, getting in passing lanes. He can't do that in this game. He's going to have to be on Chris Paul and harassing him into making decisions he doesn't want to make. And Chris is pretty hard to make him get rattled. So if I had to look at one matchup that's going to make a difference, if Tony's guarding Chris Paul, he's got to play him as well as he possibly can, because Chris Paul can single-handedly beat any team in the league on any night.
Now, have you heard Lionel Hollins talk about that, or is that just your idea of putting Allen on CP3?
It's what we've done in the past this season. I'm going off our history of when we've played him in the past. We often use Tony on Chris Paul and move Mike over to Foy. And it's had a lot of success. So.
Without a doubt. I think that could really work well. I have to sheepishly admit that I haven't had a chance to see too many of the games because of this crazy season. However, I want to weigh into, because I feel like the Clippers have their hands full. I think that Mike Conley can do some damage. I'm not so sure that Chris Paul is going to be able to keep him in front of him and keep him contained. I've seen Conley, in the open court, be one of the quicker guys in the league. So here's my question: are the Clippers, who wants to run in this series? Nick, I want you to weigh in on that one.
Well, I mean, all season the Clippers have been pretty slow it down. I think I would say the Grizzlies more so, because if they're forcing turnovers, if they get that quicker pace, even though Chris Paul can, he can play in the half court or in transition, then I think they're a little bit happier than just with Chris Paul slowly controlling everything in half court, kind of trying to dictate matchups.
Chip, what do you think?
The Grizzlies definitely would be wanting to push the pace. We want to create offensive confusion for the Clippers, create the turnovers. We run off of our turnovers. We're not like a Phoenix Suns 7 seconds and shoot team. If we can get turnovers, we're going to attack the basket off of turnovers. We just struggled getting turnovers against the Clippers this year. But that's if there's going to be an up-tempo game, it's going to be based off of our creating turnovers.
And I think the other key here for Memphis is Rudy Gay, who didn't participate last year, didn't have that experience. I think he needs to come to play. And if I were starting my own team, had it been 2 years ago, I would have started my team with Rudy Gay and Brandon Roy, because those two guys compete. At least in my mind, from what I've seen, and he's size and he's a good shooter. And I feel like if the Clippers can't control him, then they have no hope of winning those games.
Well, I think Rudy's obviously got a mismatch, or he's a better player today than Caron Butler. They're both UConn grads. They know each other. They play in the off season. And Caron Butler is a very talented defender, an underrated defender in that regards. And if he makes it hard on Rudy, it's going to be difficult to see Rudy being the big-time player he can be. Rudy sometimes prefers not to be forced.
Nick,
but he's been doing it this year, especially the last month. Rudy's been huge for us.
Excuse me, and Nick, do you think that the Clippers can handle him?
Well, in the previous games this season, he scored somewhat. I mean, he had his way, but he also had some turnovers. So it was sort of a toss-up in terms of are you going to see the good Rudy Gay later in this playoff series, or are you going to see that one that struggled more with turnovers force some things? But he's improved as the season has gone on. Recovered from he was looking like he was on track to have one of his worst seasons. Now he's basically back where he was 2 seasons ago. So I'm a little bit worried about that matchup. I don't think he'll dominate the matchup, but he'll be better than he was in the regular season against the Clippers.
Well, really quickly, let's touch upon the Clippers and the Memphis Grizzlies coaching and what we think about that. So, Nick, tell me what you think about the matchup between Hollins and Del Negro.
Yeah, well, I'm not. I don't think I'm going to shock anybody when I say that I would prefer to have Lionel Hollins in this matchup. In terms of the defensive adjustments, especially Vinny Del Negro, took a while to get this team into a position where it can defend even halfway effectively, and that could make some of a difference because this is going to be a close series, and I would definitely leaning on the side of Hollins.
Chip, what are you feeling about?
I think that's, if there's one area that Memphis has a distinct advantage, it's coaching, which is interesting because when Lionel Hollins was brought here, he was replacing Mark Iavaroni. His original contract was set to expire when Iavaroni's contract expired, and everyone in Memphis assumed Hollins was just brought in as a caretaker until we could get the Iavaroni contract off, and then we'd go after a big-name coach. And he has really brought a defensive culture here, a grit and grind attitude, which is kind of our catchphrase. And he is one of the more effective coaches coming out of timeouts and getting productive results. I think it's a huge advantage for us having Hollins as our coach. And if there's, like we said earlier, the adjustments during the games and between games, I feel very comfortable that we'll make the right moves. It may not be enough because the talent at the top of the Clippers is phenomenal. But if there's going to be a difference maker in the series for the Grizzlies, it's going to be our coach, not a player on the court.
Well, I have to agree. I think I'm going to close out with my weigh-in on that. And I would not only take Hollins as a coach, I think I'd take him as a player, too. So,
I'd have to agree with that. Collins was a great player, and the team represents the type of player he was. So He's done a super job of bringing that to our team.
Well, here's what's going to happen, because I get to tell you what I think is going to happen and what will happen. I'm sorry to tell you, Nick, but I really feel like this is going to be not a very long series. I think it's going to go 5 games. I think that the Grizzlies have way too much down the bench and on the bench. And Chris Paul ultimately is going to wear himself out trying to get good shots for everybody else. So thank you guys for joining us. This is a great conversation. We hope to pick it up again later on in the series, and we will get you back in the conversation. Thanks.